So I'm Glenn Martin. I'm the govCMS product owner. That role does a lot of little things. I bridge a few gaps between out-front communications, back-end development. I'm neither a comms nor a development person, but I end up talking to a lot of agencies about how they can come to govCMS. I'm going to give you just a quick what is govCMS. I don't want to assume that everybody knows what it is. So GovCMS is both a Drupal distribution and GovCMS is a program. So we talk about the GovCMS service, which encapsulates hosting and platform and support and maintenance. All levels of government can use the GovCMS service specifically. Anybody can use the govCMS distribution. So anybody can download the distribution from Drupal.org or GitHub. You don't have to be government and go and do whatever you want with it. But the govCMS service is only for government. Acquia is our primary partner, but through Acquia and externally, we have a vast range of professional services. And these can be from design, technical architecture, IA, UX, you name it, it can be done. The main thing for agencies coming into the govCMS service is it's a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Finance. So the Department of Finance is behind govCMS. We created govCMS for a few reasons. People might be familiar with GovSpace. It's a WordPress offering that was offered out by Department of Finance quite a few years ago. It was good, it filled a little need, but WordPress is great as a blog and not that great at sort of enterprise websites. So we built on our experience with WordPress and GovSpace to make govCMS to be all of these things, to meet the e-government and digital economy policies. The government's, it's not quite a mandate, but boy, if you're not considering using open source, you really have to be. Using cloud, finally getting government websites in the cloud. Some agencies have already been there before govCMS. I'm not saying that we broke the ground on this, but we're making it easier for agencies to get into cloud. And it follows best practice for service design. So service design is a new buzzword, I think, for government websites. Again, service design's been around forever. We've all known about it. We've all tried to do it, but I think now we're finally getting to platforms that do enable it for us a bit more. We did it for reuse. So part of the open source software policy, anything that a government agency contributes into govCMS goes to everybody. There is no IP lock-in. We ensure that anything that we do, no matter how expensive, it has to go into the distribution, and from the distribution it can go to anybody. And it also helps in doing it this way that due diligence, time to market for your websites or your new functionality can be shorter because you'll see shortly. We've done a number of things which an agency would normally have to do, such as security assessments, for example. There's 6 months of your life you're never going to get back. We've done it. So you can either rely on the work that we've done in front of you, or, hey, if you want to go and blow 6 months of your life on security, that's cool. You can do that too. But yeah, we've gone and put our name on it. So the distribution has been available since July 2015. More than 7,000 downloads from Drupal.org so far. Now there's distributions with a lot more than that, but I think seeing as we're not even one, we released the govCMS service officially, coincidentally at Drupal South last year in Melbourne in March, so we're not even 1 year old. We regularly update it. Security, features, we keep it maintained. That can go away. And through the service, especially when you start seeing about the software as a service shortly, The security part of in particular, there was critical security updates in August last year. We were patched within 24 hours. Everybody that was on the Acquia Cloud Site Factory govCMS service was patched, and not one of those agencies had to lift a finger to do it. This is really important. I don't know how many of you were involved in Drupalgeddon in 2014 when there was some bad things went down, but we're taking away that sort of worry that you need to maintain the sites yourselves. So I'm just blazing through these bits, conscious that we're running up against lunch. So we save you time. We do a lot of your compliance stuff all ready for you out of the box. For an agency, we will share these documents with you. We will share you our security assessments and all of that information that we use to convince our execs that we've done the right thing. Other things, AGLS metadata, out of the box, we're hitting 90% of it. As you create your pages, it's already there. The AGLS is sort of, personally, I feel it's fallen off a bit for agencies. It's one of those things that unless you were involved in agency web about 10, 15 years ago, maybe there's some of you sitting here going, what's AGLS? Why do I have to worry about it? It's actually a web standard mandate. We're helping fix that. We made sure that when we created the distribution that we built these standards in there so it's nice and easy. You can get on with maintaining your site's content. So you don't need to be deep Drupal developers to use govCMS. It is like any other CMS. It is a content authoring system which works really nice. And lastly, the DTO themselves recommend considering govCMS if you're looking at a new CMS. You can also, if you want to throw any questions at me as we go, please just put your hand up and that is no problem at all. A lot of our starter themes, WCAG compliant, responsive out of the box. If anybody saw Sharon's talk this morning, unfortunately nobody's really used the starter themes. Everybody still wants to have their own little designs. We've got standard users and workflows out of the box, which will fit most agencies, from a content author to an approver to go live, but you can customise it. So we've got Workbench sitting in the back end. If you want your workflow approval to go through some crazy 5-step right up to the secretary kind of stuff, you can build it in. A lot of things in there, starter content types. WYSIWYG editors, you can put all the video streaming and any streaming service in there just using the short codes. So no HTML knowledge, no having to be a coder from a content level. We put in front of the software as a service, DDoS protection, CDN, antivirus. It's all there by default. You don't come to us and say, oh, don't worry about the CDN, I don't need it. You get it regardless. So everybody in our Acquia Cloud Site Factory will have this in front of them. All of it is hosted in Amazon Web Services across 2 data centres here in Australia. So any of that sovereignty questions that you might have, they are data centres in Australia. Lots more stuff, which I won't go into, but you can always have a chat to us. So into the transitioning to govCMS, like how would an agency come? There's many different paths, and it's going to depend on quite a number of things, including an agency's own ability in Drupal, what your website's like, what its purpose is, how complex it is or not. The 3 that I've got up here at the moment are some of our earlier sites that were some of the first in the service. So Asada. Small agency, and I have one person as a web team. It's actually 0.5. And let me tell you, when Essendon gets in the news again, it's nobody. So Nick over at Asada and Tony, they're great guys, but boy do they get busy. They were our first govCMS site to launch. They were a fully supported outsourced build, so they obviously didn't have the resources internally or the technical ability, so it was completely outsourced. Communications, we're talking a larger agency. Communications is probably one of our more complex or even most complex site on the govCMS service at the moment. Because they're an early adopter, they helped us build out a lot of early functionality that sits into govCMS today. It's a really important point to make. Agencies can bring functionality into govCMS. It is possible, but we have to always keep in mind we're running a whole of government service. So we're less likely to approve and develop a tiny little niche module over here for the tiny little agency that nobody else is going to use. Because keep in mind, everything that we build into the distribution, every module that we add, we need to maintain it. We need to keep it up to date. We need to watch the security on it. So it's a nice little balancing act. But communications as an early adopter, yeah, a lot of their functionality has been folded back into the distribution. PPSR site, that's a great little site. This was an example of an agency who have technical ability in-house. It just wasn't necessarily deep Drupal. So through a little program called Jumpstart, which is kind of like Drupal Bootcamp really, where you take a smallish site, and Acquia came in and over a 4-week period, skilled up the internal staff to be able to build a Drupal site, hang it all together, theme it up, and make it go live. And that team now is now fully self-sufficient, and the same team is now looking at developing the agency's major site, which is really good. And you can be a unique and beautiful snowflake. There is not this idea that everybody in govCMS has to look the same, okay? So there's the Asada site. That was our very first site that was released. This is CrimTrack. CrimTrack came over to us a few months ago. This site is being worked on at the moment. I think they're updating their theme again. So it might be looking different in the near future. The communications website, unfortunately I don't have the screen real estate for it. It's one of these mega page front pages, but lots of exciting stuff in communications.gov.au. In particular, the Have Your Say module. This is online consultations. Not an online consultation where you go and stand up a blog and ask people for comment, and really you're not expecting anybody to comment. This is genuine consultations where people can leave comments, they can upload submissions. Out the back of it, once it's finished, they can go and display everything. The CDPP site, OSB, the branch that I work in, Online Services branch, we built this one up for them. You might have heard Sharon talk about the small sites, where we've built some for agencies that don't quite have the budget required for a bigger build. And there's the PPSR site that I mentioned earlier. So in these transitions to GovCMS, what have we seen? Sharon's quoted over 300 CMSs when we did our market research. What I found really interesting, some of these things listed here, so they might be CMSs, but they've had fallen into such a state of disrepair that they were miles out of date, had gone into abandonware. All the developers, whoever made it, had disappeared, probably reskilled into Drupal, to be honest. But they were using their CMSs as flat HTML web systems, and this is how bad it had got. There was one of them on there with one particular agency where they'd hack together some scripts. The CMS would do its thing, but then a script would output it to flat HTML, and then they'd bring up an FTP server and upload it via FTP to the website. It was crazy. Every time I think I've seen it all, as far as an agency sort of chewing gum and baling wire, keeping the system together, something even more incredible comes along. The point here is just because you are on platform X does not mean that you can't come to Drupal. The path, it will be easier or harder depending on how much you want to hold on to your content, your workflow, your layouts. It's actually a great time. Some of these you'll see, they're old. If you're holding on to the design and workflows from these things, trying to bring it into a new world, I'd really recommend it, because you're going to have this brand new shiny thing and still be hamstrung by the old ways of doing things. So the service itself, we have, from the hosting, it's more than hosting, but I'll just call it hosting to keep it simple. We've got two environments. We've got our SaaS, our software as a service, and we've got our PaaS, our platform as a service. When we started govCMS, we thought, naively it turns out, and we have learned so many lessons, we thought everyone would come into the software as a service. So this is where it's a shared code base. It's all managed for you. This is the part where you don't have to worry about patching and security and modules, etc., because we look after it. It's accredited up to the application. Because we manage the distribution in the shared environment, our security, unclassified security accreditation goes up to the application level because we maintain it. CD and DDoS by default. The PaaS must be Drupal, but we do prefer govCMS. You can't bring in SharePoint or Dreamweaver or whatever, so it must be Drupal. It is security accredited up to the infrastructure. Even if you use the govCMS distribution on top of it, the moment you go and stick a new module in it, or the moment you think, the password complexity module is a bit too strict for my liking, I'm going to water that down a bit, there goes our security accreditation. So this is why we only do it up to the infrastructure layer. In the past, the responsibility for the IRAP assessment remains with the agency at the application layer. Really important to keep in mind. Yes?
Just wondering, what percentage of people are using PaaS versus SaaS?
So that's interesting. Yeah, it's without firm numbers, I'd say it's almost half and half, because we've had a number of agencies. We've got shared services using PaaS, for example, so they brought a whole suite of Drupal sites with them. Individually, I mean, I think the SaaS is outweighing it because there's more benefits there. But yeah, the main reason why we started talking about PaaS is the more and more agencies just kept coming to us. It's like, we'd love to use govCMS, but we just can't migrate to your distribution yet. We want to, but we still have this hosting issue now, or this contract issue, or this support issue, and we need help. So how can we come across? And that's when we started talking openly about PaaS and offer it as a service now. So the software as a service, it's good for complex sites needing a strong CMS because we're using Drupal. It's good for agencies with low Drupal development skill, and by low I mean even to none. All right, so you don't need to be a Drupal developer to use Drupal as a CMS once it's up and running. We know this. I know I'm preaching to the converted. Sites where you don't want to maintain the thing. So think about your annual reports, okay? You go and put your annual report up and you put it into a CMS because you want your users to be able to work some magic with how they present the information to themselves and sort it and categorise it. But you don't want to be continuously patching it and keeping it up to date. So this is what the SaaS is good for. We save you money both on hosting and resources. The resources, you've got implicit and explicit stuff. You don't need as many people to look after it. You're either your own people or an outsourced support contract because we do that for you. And the costing studies that we did before the service, we found that we would deliver value for money based on the hosting arrangements that we'd been hearing about as we went out and did our studies for it. So not so good for sites that require custom code base hacks. Agencies that want to be forever tweaking things like modules, putting new modules in, and sites that are highly experimental. I will clarify, SaaS out of the box is very powerful. You know what you can do with content types and views and filters and panels and blocks. All of these things, anything from the admin console in particular, you can build out an incredibly complex site. So it is not that the SaaS is for the simple stuff, not by any means. The communications.gov.au site, again, I'll use that as the example. The thing with those things above, you need to know Drupal. So you need somebody with ability above just a content author. Anybody can author content, right? For those who have gotten into the more advanced elements of maintaining Drupal admin, you need somebody to be able to do these. So you either do it internally, like PPSR did through skilling up their own staff, or you outsource it. It's when we capital D develop for Drupal that the environment needs consideration. You might consider the PaaS instead. So complex sites needing a strong CMS, that sounds remarkably familiar to SaaS. But it's good for agencies with high dev skills, sites that for whatever reason need constant tweaks and attention, and sites that genuinely require unique use cases for customization. Now, the keynote speaker this morning spoke about this 80-20. I love 80-20. My team over there are rolling their eyes at the moment. So it's a Pareto principle. It's fantastic. It's this Italian economist back in the day. What I like is this idea that you can stand up 80% of a website. So think of what perfection would look like for web and understand that we never ever get there, right? Okay, but you can get 80% of the way there with 20% of your effort. Okay, think about that. But then that 80% to 100% that represents perfection, your effort is now inverse. And you've really got to ask yourself, is getting that widget pixel perfect right in that point for people who only visit from the southern county of Tasmania, is it really worth that effort? So when we talk about these unique uses for customization, it's great that you've got this brand new world and this thing that can do all of this magic. Just watch what you're doing, because more often than not, when you scratch the surface of the SES, people's requirements for this funky stuff, you'll actually find that more often than not, it's not worth the effort. But it's not so good for reducing resourcing requirements and costs, sites that are low touch. So remember earlier the annual reports, you don't need an annual report sitting in a PaaS environment. And not as good for agencies with limited Drupal skills. Should be a little asterisk there, you can still outsource it. So DHS, for example, they have skilled up immensely, which is great, but they started out bringing in support, and we learnt this morning that the DHS site has now gone live on the weekend. They're in PaaS in govCMS, which is really exciting for us. So the things you need to ask yourself going for SaaS or PaaS, all right? Do you have good Drupal dev skills, or can you get them? If the answer is no, you're going to be looking at SaaS pretty closely. And look, to be honest, more often than not, we'd like to see agencies in the SaaS environment. It represents genuine savings in both money and effort in running and maintaining sites. Do you want to constantly maintain the code base? Are you prepared to maintain the IRAP accreditation? Get in the PaaS. We don't do the application layer. It is the agency's responsibility to go and do it. Now, you might stand up a site and not do an IRAP assessment or not do any of those things. To put it lightly, this is on your head, whether you do these things or not. But the responsibility is yours. Can you outsource a dev component? Does the site have to constantly evolve? Are there custom modules, functionality? Are they genuine requirements, really genuine, or are they edge cases? Are they a thought bubble that happened in some board meeting somewhere that now you just got to try and politely undo? The two environments, it is not one or the other. If you go into PaaS, you can't use SaaS, or a SaaS, no, it's not that at all. You can blend it up. We've got a few agencies that have got sites in both. The obvious examples, they've got the light, no-touch ones over in SaaS where they've stood it up, they've done all the work, and now it's just BAU. So it's just content, keeping the content up to date. But then there's ones running over in PaaS. We see betas in PaaS, for example. A lot of agencies, thanks to the DTO, really on board with this idea of running beta sites and concept sites, and that's really exciting. I think that's great. But you've also got those other in Drupal, not ready for the govCMS distribution yet, so putting that one in. Paths to onboarding to govCMS. So do it all yourself, assuming you've got all the ability internally, and quite a few agencies do. So govCMS did not bring Drupal to government. It was already there to an extent. So some agencies do have that full dev stack internally. Or you can outsource a lot. Through the govCMS program, you can come to us with what the site, where the site is, how you want it to appear. We can talk professional services through either Acquia or you can source your own. You might have your own web shop that you've done work with for years and you're more than happy with. There is no requirement to use Acquia or use us. We recently had a couple of agencies completely out of the blue. They knocked on the door and, oh, we've got this website for govCMS. And so, oh, great, let's have a sit down and discuss your requirements and your time for it. No, it's built. These guys have already done it for us and we're ready to forklift over. How do we sign up? That was really exciting for us because that was with no touch to the govCMS team, which is what we wanted. We want small vendors, small to medium enterprise, to go out and actively chase business using the govCMS model. You don't need our blessing. You don't need us in the room. It helps if we're there, by the way. If for those of you who saw Sharon, she mentioned a couple of times, if you're going out looking at pitching govCMS as a solution to a tender and you want Department of Finance to come along and talk about the program, so of course we can't give a blessing to anyone, but we can talk about what we're doing and we're more than happy to do that. Or that bit in the middle. So just like the PPSR team, I think the CrimTrack guys did it. Question up the back. Oh, I'm getting 5. That's not a question. Can you give me a question? That'll feel better. No. All right. So that's good. We're coming to the end anyway. So we've had a few agencies skill up. We've also, in the online services branch, we've had people come into us and take part in our sprints, watch us stand up a govCMS site, get exposed to the agile process, which has been really good. And we're now seeing agencies helping out other agencies. So where you've got, it's who's got extra resources, right? Before those agencies that have got extra resources and want to help out somebody else, we're actually seeing that cross-collaboration happening, which is awesome because it goes back to one of the slides at the beginning where we talk about government feeding back into the community. And the community can be other government, so helping out each other. Because when was the last time that you just got handed a nice little box with a bow on it that another agency had done all of this work and said, here, just take it, we want you to have it? That just never happened before, so we're really busting it open. So the stuff that didn't fit, I mentioned earlier, don't match your existing requirement. The worst thing that you can do is this is our workflow on platform X, and we want that replicated exactly into Drupal. Okay, so it can do it, and we've done it before govCMS. Our branch used to run australia.gov.au. We migrated from Documentum over to Drupal. And we matched the workflow pixel perfect. Oh God, it was awful. You don't want to do these things to yourself. Take it as an opportunity for change. Review your workflows, review your processes, review why you're publishing constant PDFs, like loading them on top of each other. Why aren't you making them into content? Why aren't you making it reusable for the citizens that come to consume your information? So really look at it as a chance. So Drupal's different, but it's the same. So content authors will feel at home. It's a tiny little retrain, but it's a retrain as you would go from any product to another product doing what is essentially the same task. It's not that difficult. So I'll wrap up there. We've probably got a few minutes before lunch if anyone's got any questions. Awkward moment where I pray for a hand to go up. Everyone's thinking about lunch. Thanks.
So the people on PASS, at the end of their project, do you guys review them at all, like to look for things that could be incorporated into the SaaS? Or
We don't review it that way, but typically Acquia is, so Acquia always has a support component in the PaaS offerings. So they're at least letting us know what's going on.
you see good stuff you hear about?
Yeah, pretty much. So, and any ideas out there people can bring across as well. Thanks for your time, everybody. I really appreciate you coming.